All right. Good evening, my friends. Good evening, and welcome to another presentation of Cepher Academy. I'm Stephen Pidgeon, and tonight we're going to be doing a bit of a murder mystery. It should promise to be interesting, I'm hoping. And I need to preface a couple of remarks. Of course, as usual, all scriptural citations are taken from the Cepher Millennium Edition, and which is available at cepher.net, www.cepher.net. And of course, this is part of the Cepher Academy presentations that we do here on Thursday nights. Just as a little bit of notice here, I will not be doing a presentation next Thursday as I will be traveling. So I won't be doing a presentation next Thursday. There won't be a Cepher Academy presentation next Thursday because I will be traveling, which is both good and bad, I suppose. But tonight's presentation, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. Oh, yes, indeed. And I'd like to also give a little bit of a shout out. Cepher Academy is up and running. We have Cepher Academy functioning in terms of the teaching on the Ivrit Aleph Beit. And soon, Shel Wagner is going to be teaching the Paleo-Hebrew Aleph Beit, which is going to be exciting. At the end of the month, on the 30th, John Breed Austin will begin on the teaching on the Mazarot. And we're going to be, again, complementing the teaching that goes on at Cepher Academy beyond our basically free discussions here on YouTube. We also will be doing some more in-depth discussions. For instance, I will be teaching scriptural history. That's going to be a lot, right? Hey, there you go, Alec. Hey, yeah, brother ZZ Top. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Alec. Well, you know how it is, brother, when you're up in the cold country, a beard really helps. It really does. I mean, because one of the toughest parts of the body to keep warm is, of course, the neck, right here, especially if you got like an open shirt, you got an open coat. So the beard really helps. And when you're out buzzing around on some four-wheeler trying to push snow out of the driveway, the beard helps a lot. Yeah, you bet. So anyway, but thanks, you guys. It's really good to see everybody here. I'm glad to see Chris and Shell and Lay and Alec and Jessica Knock, of course, picking up the light work there, Jessica. And I know you guys in Britain are suffering under, I don't know, what is it, $12 a gallon for gas over there? I mean, it's, pretty incredible what's going on. But nonetheless, we here as students of Scripture need to look and see what kind of messages we get out of Scripture. Because, of course, as Solomon says, there is nothing new under the sun. All that will be done has been done. And we're going to see here, we're going to take a look here. Yeah, the audio with Shel Wagner. It's going to be Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, starting on the 14th. Yes, Shell, and thank you so much for being there, right? Hey, Randall, good to see you, brother. Glad to see you're here. And Miriam, Barnabas, glad to see you're here. Yes, here we go. Yeah, I mean, it's such a great group that is gathered for our comment period. And remember, if you want to comment on the videos, you need to be a subscriber. So if you subscribe to this video stream, then you'll be able to comment. And assuming that you comment with a bit of dignity and a bit of class, if you know what I mean, use eloquence, it goes a long way. Okay, and then also, when we discuss this topic tonight, the Sons of Belial, this is going to be kind of a part one of a series because we're just kind of cracking the nut on this thing as to what's going on. And tonight we're going to be looking at the murder mystery, but in 2 weeks from now, we're going to be taking a broader look at the Sons of Belial in relationship to where we are now in history, because we're at such an interesting time in human history, right? In fact, those of us that are here for such a time as this, for such a time as this. And we know that such a time as this is quite a time. Boy, we're in quite a place right now, quite a space. Okay, so with that, let's see if I can find a share screen button here. Well, it's around here somewhere. Hello, where did you go? Oh, yeah, must be down here somewhere. No, maybe that isn't it. Okay, let's check this one over here. See if okay, all right, thanks for telling me that. There we go. Okay, let's share the screen here. This one. How about this one? Okay. So here we go. We're going to be looking at a Cepher Academy production. Again, discussing the topic of the Sons of Belial. The Sons of Belial. Formidable, really. Okay. So let's start with a little bit of a discussion, see what we can hone in on here. Now, as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain sons of Belial, beset the house round about and beat at the door and spoke to the master of the house, the old man, saying, bring forth the man that came into your house that we may know him. Now, this is kind of the center of our murder mystery here tonight. And this comes from Shofetiym, or the book of Judges. Now, when we're looking at this here, we're going to see very quickly that the sons of Belial are going to appear in Ivrit as here, right? The Beni Belial. Okay, now when we talk about that, let's look. Beni Belial. And you can see that these two words are attached using the makef, indicating a very close identity to this. And in some cases in scripture, you're going to see this defined not as the sons, Beni, of Belial, but the children of Belial, But nonetheless, in this passage here, where it says the sons of Belial, the Hebrew phrase there is Beni Belial. Okay. All right. So let's continue here. So what do we know from this passage? Well, we know a couple of things, that these sons of Belial were men of the city, right? Now, we talk about men of the city. It's very interesting because we have this fellow Judas Iscariot. You've heard about him. I'm sure he appears there in the New Testament, Judas Iscariot. And we have his name listed in the Cepher in an Ivrit transliteration as Yehuda Ish Kiryat. Judas Iscariot, Yehuda Ish Kiryat. So Kiryat is like town, right? Like Kiryat Arba, right? It means town. And so Ish Kiryat, townsman. Judas, the townsman, Judas townsman, you might say. Okay. So these men here were Enoshim Kiryot. They were going to be men of the city. And they were a distinct group. They were distinct. They were distinct from everybody else because they were certain. They were certain sons of Belial, Beni Belial. They were certain ones, right? It wasn't some collective. This would be a direct object. They were certain. They were ascertained. This was a discrete group of people. And they demanded the man that came in, that they might know him. Now, it's interesting because the man in that story came in with his concubine, right? And he came in with his concubine, but the guys at the door were demanding the man, right, that they might know him. Now, that's going to be indicative of some things that we will see as we begin to look at this murder mystery. Okay, so here you see, here's the passage that appears in the Ivrit, that we're talking about. So that the man should come from his house. So we see here, it's 8, right? 8 Ha'ish Asher Bo, which should come, right? Al Beitka, from his house. Then we have this last word right here, Venera Enu. Okay, well, now when we say Venera, I'm not going to get into too much detail in the Hebrew, but this word Venera Enu, we're going to see here an applicable word that you guys might recognize right off the bat, right? It's this one right here. You see that? And we see it here. So what are we going to see? Well, let's find out what we're going to see. But before they laid down, the men of the city, even the men of Sidon. Oh, okay. We have something else going on here. All right. Excuse me. I was wrong here. It's not Bene, it's Vede. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sidon, compassed the house round about, both old and young, and the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, where are the men which came into you this night? Bring them to us that we may know them. Okay. And so here we have the same word appearing here as we did in the previous one. And we will do evil to them. Okay. So who were the men of Sodom? Well, let's find out. Because it's going to be interesting to know if these sons of Belial were actually Benjamites or some other tribe. Who were the men of Sodom? Let's see. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Het, who we know would become the father of the Hittites. Sidon would be the tribe identified as the Canaanites, Sidon, or the Sidonim, but Het would be known as the Hittites, and the Jebusi, and the Emori, and the Girgashi. Now, the Jebusi, right? The Jebusi, these guys would, Yebus, these would hold the city of Jerusalem, as we will see. And the Emori, and the Girgashi, and the Hivi, and the Arki, and the Sini, and the Arvadi, and the Tzemari, and the Hamati, and afterward were the families of the Canaanim spread abroad. Well, how far abroad? Well, the border of Canaan was from Sidon, as you come near to Gerar, unto Gaza, that's down on the coast, and as you go unto Sedom, and unto Amorah, and Admah, and Sebeim, even unto Laisha. Well, okay. So the Canaanim were in Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom and Amorah. Okay. All right, let's look. See, here it is. Canaan, the Canaanim, unto Sodom and Gomorrah. All right, so when we see that, what? It was the Sidomim, the Sodomites, who first said, we will do evil. The Beni Belial would then say it again in the Cepher Shofetiym and mean the same thing. Let us know them. Let us know them. Right? And who are they talking about? In Lot's case, they were asking for Lot to send out the angels. And in the case of this in Judges, they were asking them to send out the man, not the woman. They were asking them to send out the man. Well, so let's talk about these sons of Belial. We know Beni is going to mean sons, right? Sons or children, Beni. And so what is Belial? Well, Belial has got an interesting discussion because Belial, it comes from H1097, which is Beli, and it comes from H3276, which is Yaal. So what does it mean when it's combined? It means, well, without profit, worthlessness, right? Or by extension, destruction and wickedness. All right, well, this is, again, what we get from Strong's telling us, well, this is what we think the context shows about Belial. Belial. This is what it tells us in the context of what it is. However, remember that when we talk about this worthlessness, right, we have to distinguish between a hobo, a tramp, and a bum. Remember that a hobo is a migrant worker. A tramp is a migrant non-worker, and a bum is a non-migratory non-worker, okay? So we're talking about worthlessness. So basically, we're basically saying these guys were bums, okay? Bums, supposedly. But when we look at Belial and separately, we find out Beli means properly failure, nothing, destruction, usually without not yet, because as long as, but hey, how about corruption? So Beli means corruption. All right, now what about Ya'al? Well, Ya'al, this is a primitive root, and it means to ascend or to be valuable, set forward, doing good, or profit. So you could say Belial is profitable corruption, maybe profitable corruption. Well, maybe. But maybe Belial, the sons of ascending corruption, or the sons of corruption on the rise, right? Okay. All right. Now, let's see where we find this Belial for the first time. If you shall hear say in one of your cities, which Yahweh Eloheka has given you to dwell there, saying, certain men, the children of Belial, and again, the phrase used there, even though they're saying children here, the phrase used is Beni Belial, are gone up from among you and have withdrawn the inhabitants of their cities, saying, let us go and serve other Elohim. Okay, so another criteria shows up. The sons of Belial serve other Elohim, which ye have not known. Then you shall inquire, make search, and ask diligently, and behold, if it be the truth and the thing certain, then it's an abomination, and it's wrought among you, and you shall smite the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword. So doesn't make any difference whether or not they've done anything wrong. Go over there and smite the inhabitants with the sword, destroying it utterly, and all that is therein, and the cattle thereof with the edge of the sword. Even kill the cattle, right? Because they brought another Elohim, even kill the cattle. Why? Because we know that demons can occupy animals as they occupied the pigs, right? So this is the instruction about the children of Belial. So Belial, the sons of ascending corruption, who are doing what? They're going after to serve other Elohim. Okay, time for us to embark on a criminal investigation. So we're going to use our criminal investigation skills here for a little bit of this discussion tonight. Now, what we're going to be talking about tonight is the most heinous crime described in Scripture. And, there's not a whole lot of crimes described in Scripture. There's a lot of things that take place that would be construed as crimes. For instance, if you look at, David's adultery with Bathsheba and his setting up of her husband to die in battle, right? Uriah the Hittite. There's other things that look like when Moses killed the Egyptian, right? These things are crimes, right? But none compared to the crime we're about to describe and about the crime we're about to discuss. And the question is, when we look at this crime, we want to ask ourselves some serious questions about what happened and do we have proper answers, okay? So what do we know? We have the testimony of a single witness who set forth the story in the form of an affidavit. There's no contradicting testimony. The crime is heinous, so the emotional impact may render a non-objective decision as to guilt. The victim was a woman who was called a concubine. Okay. So what's a concubine? I mean, this is always a good question, right? I mean, here you got, like, for instance, if you look at the life of Yaakov, Jacob. So here's Jacob, and he wants to marry Rachel, or Rachel, as we say. He wants to marry Rachel, and he goes to Laban and says, okay, I want to marry your daughter. And Laban says, well, 7 years. And so Yaakov says, okay, 7 years, I can do 7 years. I know guys who have waited 7 years for their wife. Yes, in fact, I do. And so here they are. He works for 7 years for Laban, and Laban says, okay, marital night. And he ends up with Leah. Now, Leah, of course, is a beautiful woman. The Scripture describes her as really quite fantastic, but it's not the woman that Yaakov had contracted to wed. He had contracted to wed Rachel. But Laban says to him, hey, that's not our way for the younger to be married before the older. You need to marry the older. But if you want the younger, you can work for me another 7 years and you can get the younger. Okay, all right, fine. So he does. And so when he does this, Laban bestows upon him, Zilpah, the maid of Leah, and Bilhah, the maid of Rachel. And these women become concubines to Yaakov. Now, there's 12 tribes, but 4 of the 8 were born to the concubines. 4 of the 8 were born to the concubines. Well, so you got to ask yourself the question, well, if you're the mother of the kids, of his kids, how is it that you're a concubine and not a wife? You're the mother of 2 of his kids, and you live with this person your whole life, and the kids are growing up in the same household. How is it that you don't qualify as a wife, but you're only a concubine? Well, according to the definition, we have this word pilegesh, which is the word that is used for concubine, although it can also be used to define the male equivalent, a paramour, right? A paramour. And it's the male equivalent of a concubine. So a concubine is a woman who cohabits, there's one of the key words, with a man without being legally married to him, or a woman contracted to a man as a secondary wife, often having few legal rights and low social status. Okay. So, all right. So this is going to be kind of interesting because we're going to be seeing some very interesting fault lines being cracked as we break into this criminal event and start to look at it. All right. Now let's take a look. Okay. So we're going to start in Judges, Shofetiym, Shofet, judge, Shofetiym, judges, right? Ma Shofat, from the judge, which is also called judgments, or they say it in the Yiddishized form, mishpat, right? Ma Shofat, mishpat, judgments. Okay, so here it is, Shofetiym, chapter 19. And it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Yasharel, that there was a certain Levii. Now, a Levii is a Levite, okay? A Levite. And so this particular Levite was qualified as a Levite priest, okay? In fact, if you go back earlier in the book, he's being recruited to be a priest in the city of Dan. But here he is, he's a certain Levi sojourning on the side of Mount Ephraim. Now, Mount Ephraim, again, you're talking up near the city of Shechem. And he's up there sojourning. Why? Because the Levites have no inheritance. So he's kind of wandering around. And he took to him a concubine out of Bethlehem, Beit Lechem. He takes him a concubine. Now, why didn't he take himself a wife? Why is he taking a concubine, right? He takes a concubine out of Beit Lechem in Yehuda. And his concubine played the whore, so the script tells us. His concubine played the whore. Well, how did she play the whore as to this Levite priest who didn't take her as a wife, but took her instead as a concubine? Yeah, you can hang out and be like kind of like a wife, but you're not getting any legal rights, right? You're not getting any status. And she played the whore. How did she play the whore? Well, she went away from him and back to her father's house in Beit Lechem, Yehuda, and was there for 4 whole months. Okay, so she says, look, no wife, I'm leaving. I don't know if that's what she said, but we do know this, that he took her as a concubine, and she said, well, since I don't mean anything to you, I'm going back to dad's house. So she goes back for 4 months, and her man arose and went after her to speak friendly unto her. Oh, come on. And to bring her again, having his servant with him and a couple of asses. And she brought him into her father's house. When the father of the damsel saw him, he rejoiced to meet him. Oh, you're the guy who's taken my daughter as the concubine. Okay, all right. And his father-in-law, the text says, and his father-in-law, the damsel's father, retained him, and he abode with them 3 days. So they did eat and drink and lodge there. Okay. And it came to pass on the 4th day, when they arose early in the morning, that he rose up to depart. And the damsel's father said unto his son-in-law, comfort your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way. And they sat down and did eat and drink, both of them together. For the damsel's father had said unto the man, be content, I pray you, and tarry all night, and let your heart be merry. So you can see that dad is like, my daughter's back home here, so why don't you stick around here? I'll make sure you got something to eat. And every day he's got the excuse, well, have something to eat, relax, take a break. Well, dinner is just about ready. You sure you want to leave now? But relax, right? And so the son is going, so when the man rose up to depart, his father-in-law urged him, therefore he lodged there again. You don't have to go, hang out, right? And he arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart. We're out of here. Tomorrow, 6:00, we're gone. Let's go. I've got the asses fed, everything's saddled, all the stuff is packed up. 6:00, no coffee, hit the road, right? He arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart. And the damsel's father said, what? Comfort your heart, I pray you. Come on in, have some breakfast. And they tarried there until afternoon, and they did eat, both of them. See, here he is again. Oh, I've got the food cooking. Can't you smell that? Where are you going? And when the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the damsel's father, said unto him, behold, now the day draws towards evening. I pray you, tarry all night. Behold, the day grows to an end. Lodge here, that your heart may be merry. And tomorrow, get you early on your way, that you may go home. But the man would not tarry that night. But he rose up and departed and said, forget it. I'm out of here, right? And he came over against Jebus, okay, which is Jerusalem. Now, we have to remember that when you read this in your average, Hebrew Bible, average English Bible, rather, you're going to see Jebusites, right? Jebusites, not Yavus, not the Yevusi, but the Jebusites. Now, we know that the Jebusites were sons of Canaan. We saw that earlier in the presentation. The Jebusites were the son of Canaan, and they had a fortress at this town called Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, here we see this city controlled in this region. It's in the middle of Benjamin, but it is called Jerusalem. Now, for those of you that have been to Bethlehem, you know that you can see Jerusalem pretty much from Bethlehem. I mean, it's very, very close. And when you don't have a wall there that you have to go around, you can just, when there's no room at the inn, you can kind of make your way over to Bethlehem pretty quickly and find lodging and food. So Bethlehem is not far from Jerusalem, and it's the kind of place where if they had left late in the afternoon, they would get to Jerusalem in a fairly reasonable hour, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like this, okay? And there were with him the 2 asses saddled, and his concubine was also with him. So here we have the Levi leaving Bethlehem, Beit Lechem, going to the Yevus, which is Jerusalem, and he's got his 2 asses, his servant, and his concubine heading in this direction. Now, when they got by Yevus, the day was far spent. And the servant said unto his Adonai, come, I pray you, and let us turn into this city, Jerusalem, of the Yevusim, and lodge in it. And his Adonai said unto him, we will not turn aside hither into this city of a stranger that's not of the children of Yasharel, because these were clearly Canaanites that were holding this city. We're going to go to the tribes of Yasharel. That's where we're going to stay. We're not staying here. We'll pass over to Giva, which is not far from here. We just get on the other side of Jerusalem. We'll get up to Giva. And he said unto his servant, come and let us draw near to one of these places to lodge all night in Giva or in Ramah. Now we know Ramah right now it's in the West Bank. It's in an area called Samaria. And Ramah is the capital there, up there, but it's not far. You're talking about maybe 30 miles from Jerusalem, if that far, right? It's not far from Jerusalem. So you could make it, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, they're going to get in. And they passed on and went on their way. And the sun went down upon them when they got to Giva. Okay, so we're talking about maybe 6, 7, right? Which belongs to who? Binyamin. And they turned aside thither to go in and to lodge to Giva. Now, when we say this land belonged to Binyamin, we're not talking about Binyamin held title to it. We're talking about that when the land was divided during the time of Joshua, there was a land grant that was given to the tribe of Benjamin, or the tribe of Binyamin. And this land grant that was given was this land that surrounded Jerusalem, but did not include Jerusalem because Jerusalem was held by the Jebusites or the Jebusim in a fortress, and it was virtually an impenetrable fortress, and the strong city of Yerushalayim, which at one time was known as Salem, when Melchizedek was there, okay? And so what? So he is entering into Geba, and he's entering into the land now. He's in the land that is of the tribe of Benjamin. And they turned aside thither to go in and to lodge in Geba. And when he went in there, he sat himself down in the street of the city, for there was no man that took him into his house to lodging. What are we going to do? I don't know. Go into the middle of the street. You guys can sleep on the sidewalk, right? And these towns were small, right? Okay. And behold, there came an old man from his work out of the field at evening, which was also of Mount Ephraim. So this old man was up from, the area of Ephraim. So we're talking about Shechem. Now that's quite a bit north and a little bit to the west. And he sojourned in Geba. So he's traveling too. But the men of the place were Ben Hayamini. The men of the place were of the tribe of Benjamin, Ben Hayamini. And when he had lifted up his eyes, he saw a wayfaring man in the street of the city. And the old man said, "Whither do you go? And whence do you come?" And he said unto him, "We are passing from Beit Lechem, Yehuda, toward the south of Mount Ephraim. From thence I am." So remember, the old man is from Ephraim, and the Levi is also from Ephraim. "And I went to Beit Lechem, Yehuda, but I am now going to the house of Yahweh, and there is no man that receives me to house." Okay, yet there is both straw and provender for our asses, and there is bread and wine also for me, and for your handmaid, and for the young man which is with your servants, there is no want of anything. And the old man said, "Peace be with you. Howsoever, let all your wants lie upon me, only lodge not in the street." So he brought him into his house and gave provender unto the asses, and they washed his feet and did eat and drink. Okay. All right. Okay. I hope you guys are doing okay in the chat over here. All right. Now, we're going to continue. Okay. Here's when we get into the grist of what's going to go down here for you criminal enthusiasts. Okay. Now, as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain sons of Belial, beset the house round about and beat at the door and spoke to the master of the house, the old man, saying, "Bring forth the man that came into your house, that we may know him." And the man, the master of the house, went out unto them and said unto them, "Nay, my brethren, nay, I pray you, do not do so wickedly," right? Al-ha'ra'u. You shall not do your evil, is what the Hebrew phrase is there. "Seeing that this man is coming to my house, do not do this folly," right? You're going to repeat what was happening in Sodom and Gomorrah. Do not do this, right? "Behold, here is my daughter, a maiden, and his concubine. Them I will bring out now, and humble ye them, and do with them what seems good unto you. But unto this man do no vile thing." Okay. Now, let's talk about this particular thing. Here you have the old man who's going to take care of the Levite priest, and he's going to say, when these strangers come up, bring out the man. "Oh, no, don't do that. That's a heinous act. But here, we'll send out my daughter and his concubine. Have at it," right? Now, when you think about that, this begins a kind of, open criminality. Could they have fought? Did they have anyone to go to? Were there any judges in this community? Was there anybody to say, "Hey, wait a minute, you can't do this, you sons of Belial, get away," right? No. And there was an unwillingness to stand against them, with force to protect these women. Instead, "Oh no, you can't touch the Levite. Send out the women." All right, now let's see what happens. Okay. But the men would not hearken to him. So what happens? The men would not listen. "No, we're not making that deal. Nope, we're not going to do it." So the man took his concubine, the Levite took his concubine and brought her forth unto them. Now, you see, the old man's daughter didn't show up. She didn't go out, right? The old man made the deal. We'll send out my daughter and his concubine. And when it came time to make the deal, the only one that went out was the concubine. And how did she get out there? The man, the Levite, sent her out. The Levite sent her out and brought her forth unto them. And they did know her and abused her all the night until the morning. So we know here that the testimony that's going on here at this point is that the Levite priest pushed his concubine, the one that left him for 4 months, he pushes her out the door and says, you get out there and take care of these guys. And they rape her all night long. And when the day began to spring, they let her go. Okay, when the day began to spring, they let her go. So what happened? She moved. Then came the woman. You see this? She moved. She moved. They let her go, and she walked in the dawning of the day, and she fell down at the door of the man's house where her Adoni was till it was light. And her Adoni rose up in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went out to go his way. And behold, the woman, his concubine, was fallen down at the door of the house, and her hands were upon the threshold. Now, at this point, does it say she's dead? No, it says she walked back to the house, and she fell down at the doors, and her hands were upon the threshold. Why were her hands upon the threshold? Because they probably locked the door so these guys couldn't get in, right? And he said unto her, up and let us be going, but none answered. Okay, none answered. So who knows what her condition was, right? She may have passed out from all the abuse. Who knows what her condition was? She may have been in a hyper state of shock. Who knows what this means, right? But then the man took her upon his ass. Well, here, let me throw you over the donkey. I'll throw you over the donkey. And the man rose up and got him unto his place. Now, the journey from Giva up to Shechem is quite a journey. That's much more of a journey, and that's up over hill and dale, right? That's over hill and dale. Okay. So, and she's thrown over the donkey in an abused condition, and probably suffering from all kinds of shock and everything else. And when he got to his house, what does he do? He took a knife, laid hold on his concubine, and divided her together with her bones into 12 pieces, and sent her into all the coasts of Yasharel. Now, from my point of view, I got to tell you, I find that inordinate behavior, okay? I find that very inordinate. If you have a spouse and she dies, you're going to honor her body, not cut it up into pieces. If you loved her, if you know what I mean? Okay. And he sends it into the coast of Yasharel, and it was so that all that saw it said, there was no such deed done nor seen from the day that the children of Yasharel came up in the land of Mitzrayim to this day. Consider of it, take advice, and speak your minds. Okay, now we can see, we're even looking at the chat, we can see that this crime, as described in the text, this crime is a heinous crime that has taken place here, okay? And you can see even the people in the chat are reacting emotionally to what is being discussed because the crime is so egregious. All right. Now, because of that, we have an issue when we're talking about being criminal investigators, and we're going to get to that issue, okay? All right. So let's look. Put on your Sherlock Holmes hat, and let's get into this a bit. So these are the facts of the case. Be objective now. What do we know? Well, was the concubine dead when the Levi found her? We don't know. This is something we don't know. He talked to her. She didn't answer. Okay. Was there any culpability on the part of the Levii in putting her outside with the sons of Belial? If he hadn't done that, if he had defended her instead of putting her out, if he had punched the bullies in the face, maybe they'd have turned away. Who knows, right? Was the heinousness of the crime committed by the sons of Belial to gang rape her all night, was this made worse by the cutting up of the body? Now, I might wait for you guys to answer that, but I think it's very clear that the cutting up of her body made this crime infinitely worse. Infinitely worse. Okay. It became, what did Israel say? Nothing has been seen of all Israel like this crime. And who were these sons of Beliya'al? Can we find them? Now, that is a question. All right. So let's continue with this story. Let's move into chapter 20, and let's see what goes down from here. Then all the children of Yasharel went out, and the assembly was gathered together as one man from Dan even to Beersheba, with the land of Gilad unto Eliyahu in Mitzpah. Okay, so here this crime is so bad that you have tribal leaders from all Yasharel. Then all the children of Yasharel gathered to create an assembly as one man, right? All the houses has come together. And the chief of all the people, even of all the tribes of Yasharel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of Elohim, 400,000 footmen that drew the sword. Now, think about that, right? This is like, this crime is so heinous. Imagine if this happened in the United States. The crime was so bad, all 50 governors and their respective national guards gathered together in one place to hear the facts, right? Then said the children of Yasharel, we've gathered here, so tell us, how was this wickedness? Okay. And the Levii, not the old man, the Levii, the man of the woman that was slain, answered and said, I came into Geba that belongs to Binyamin. I and my concubine to lodge. And the men of Geba, see, he doesn't say the sons of Belial. He says the men of Geba rose against me and beset the house round about me by night and thought to have slain me. Well, that's not what they said. That's not what they said. Send him out that we might know him. And my concubine they forced, and she is dead. Now, does he say they killed my concubine? No, he doesn't say that. My concubine they forced, and she is dead. You see that? And I took my concubine and cut her in pieces. I took my concubine and cut her in pieces and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Yasharel, for they have committed lewdness and folly in Yasharel. Behold, ye are the children of Yasharel. Give here your advice and your counsel. Oh, okay. So let's see. In this testimony, let's review this, okay? What do we know? Is the Levi's report accurate? Well, according to the testimony we saw earlier in the written testimony of the scribe, well, the sons of Belial, a discrete group. In fact, the script says certain sons of Belial came to the house and said, send out the man that we might know him. And the Levi took it as they're going to kill me. But the old man knew what they were going to do, and it didn't have murder in mind. And that's when he said, well, we'll just send out my daughter and his concubine, not him, right? Take advantage of them. Leave us alone, right? So the Levi did not report, one, that it was the sons of Belial that had done this. Two, he did not report their true intent. And three, he did not give a report of how she died. See, the fact report says it was the sons of Belial, but he reports the men of Geba. the sons of Belial sought to do their evil, but he says they intended to slay him. Generous misstatement of the facts. He doesn't say they killed her, but that they forced her, and then she's reported to be dead. That's kind of a critical fact here, right? It's a critical fact. And then he admits cutting up the body. Now, at this point, I want to talk about this a little bit because we have this book in the Cepher. It's called Susanna or Shoshana. And it's found at the backside of the book of Daniel, along with Baal and the dragon, or Baal Vatanin, or Bel and the dragon, and then Shoshana and the prayer of Kazariah. But in Shoshana, we have a story, once again, that centers around rape, more or less. And you have these two elders of the city that have the hots for Susanna or Shoshana. And so they go and spy on her in the backyard. And then one day they figure, okay, she's going out to take a bath. There's nobody here. Let's go rape her. And so the two of them approach her and they demand favors. And she says, forget it. And so when she said that and hollered out, and the servants of the house came out, they fled without being seen. Then they go to the city and they concoct this story about how they had witnessed her in an act of adultery with some other guy. And this was the testimony of two witnesses. And they were prepared to stone Shoshana on the basis of the testimony of these two witnesses who were actually perjuring themselves to cover up the fact that they intended on raping her. So Daniel says, well, just hold on here a minute. Let me ask you guys a couple questions separately. And so he puts the one guy over here and he puts the other guy over there, an interrogative technique that has been repeated by police departments all over the world. And he asks the first one, under which tree did you see this happening? And he names a tree. And then he goes to the other guy and says, and under which tree did you see this happening? And he names a completely different tree. And he says to them both, by your own words, you have convicted yourselves. Okay. So what you see there is what's called an admission against interest. It's an admission against interest. So in the rules of evidence under the common law, an admission against interest is oftentimes admitted. I did it. Well, okay, that's an admission against interest. Even though the testimony of a person about himself is generally construed as false, when you admit to the critical elements of the crime, it's an admission against interest. And it is considered. Now here, he admits to cutting up her body, but he claims that his report is they forced her, she was dead, I cut up the body. Okay, all right, but where is the second or third witness? Where's the second or third witness? Okay, at the mouth of two witnesses or three witnesses shall he that is worthy of death be put to death, but not at the mouth of one witness he shall not be put to death. Now, let's look at this, guys. Look at this. In this particular testimony, we have one witness, the Levy, the guy who believed his wife was not his wife, the woman he wouldn't take as his wife. He believed she was playing the whore because she went back to her father for 4 months. And he goes and gets her, he brings her, and as soon as he leaves her father's care, brings her up to Giva, and she's raped all night long that night. And as a result of her being raped, he cuts up the body, right? But there's only one witness. However, as I mentioned before, this crime is an emotional crime. It's a heinous crime. And once you have a heinous crime with heinous events, you, like many juries in the world, are influenced by the emotion. Somebody has got to be punished for this crime. And we're not going to bother to ascertain the truth of the matter. All we need to do is just get close, and then somebody's going to die, right? Well, let's see what happened. And all the people arose as one man, okay? A mob. That's it. Saying, we will not any of us go into his tent, neither will any of us turn back to his own house, but now this thing shall be the thing which we will do to Giva, right? We're not going to do it to the men of Giva that committed the crime. We're not going to do it to the sons of Belial. Nope. We're going to do this to Giva. We will go up by lot against it, and we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all of the tribes of Yasharel. Okay, that's 10%, 40,000 troops, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000 to fetch victual for the people, that they may do when they come to Giva of Binyamin, according to all the folly that they have wrought in Yasharel. So all the men of Yasharel were gathered against the city, knit together as one man. Okay. Now, I think this is an important teaching, right? There's an important teaching here when we realize that the mob mentality among us is still among us. It's here. You saw it, to give you an example, you saw it throughout the Dark Ages when somebody would be accused of witchcraft, or somebody was accused of sorcery, or somebody was accused of this or accused of that. Burn them, everybody's like, that's it. These facts are just unbelievable. Burn them. And, you'd have testimony. This witch was casting spells on people and, and causing children to eat live frogs, or whatever the case may be. I don't know. I've got no idea what the accusation would be, but they would say, but the accusation alone was of such an emotional tenure that the city, that's it, kill her, burn her at the stake. Well, wait a minute. Could you prove proximate cause that she was the one who did it? What? Yeah, proximate cause, right? And oh no, we can't, we don't care about proximate cause. All we know is that was a heinous event and someone needs to die. This is the one that's been accused, kill her, burn her, right? So we know in Salem, for instance, the Salem witch trials, we saw this where a couple of girls were accusing one woman after another of coming to them as spirits in the night and being witches and trying to harm them and casting curses and on and on and on. And they just made up a set of facts that got more egregious and more egregious. And so guess what? The Salem witch trials executed one after another, after another, after another, after another. And people were coming in saying, look, you guys need to settle down and try to be objective. They couldn't get them. They could not get the mob to settle down. Now, what was Salem witch trials would become lynchings in the South, right? Oh, this black man is accused of raping this white woman. He's been accused of raping. We don't tolerate the raping of white women down here. That's it. Lynch him. Well, wait a minute. Could you offer some proof? We're not doing any proof. He's been accused. What more do we need to see? Right? When you read the book To Kill a Mockingbird, right? Atticus Finch proves at trial that the young woman was making a suggestive move towards the man, and he turned her down. And when he did, she claimed, like the two witnesses that wanted to sleep with Susanna, that he tried to rape her. And that was enough. And even though Atticus Finch proved at trial that that was the case, his client nonetheless died in prison. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that the standard of, by the testimony of two or more witnesses, the matter is established, is completely lost. We're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to form together as one man, and we're going to go get somebody. Now, he said men of Giva. We don't care which men. We're not going to take the time to sort it out. We'll just kill everybody. Kill everybody in Giva. Once we kill everybody in Giva, there might be some innocent people that die, but guess what? The guys who did the rape, they're going to be dead, assuming they're still in Giva, right? So a longstanding rule of evidence in the common law recognizes that certain circumstances call for the exclusion of evidence, which is of unquestionable relevance. In other words, okay, this guy's testimony, or Levite, his testimony is relevant because he has knowledge of the facts, but his testimony may nonetheless be excluded. Why? These circumstances entail risks which include inducing decision on a purely emotional basis. So here you are, you're hearing the facts of the case. This is traumatic. It's upsetting. Your emotions are running hot. It's like, we got to have something happen here. I've got the urge to kill. Let's go, right? That's purely an emotional basis. Situations in this area call for balancing the probative value of the evidence and the need for the evidence against harm, like the incitement of a mob, likely to result from its admission. Unfair prejudice within its context means an undue tendency to suggest decision on an improper basis, like the gravity of the crime. Well, this crime was so bad, we don't need to prove it. We can just kill this guy. This crime was so heinous, we don't need to go to all the trouble of a trial. Just lynch him, get it over with, right? You see this mindset over and over again in the old Westerns, talking about vigilante justice, right? Before the guy can ever be tried, we know he was the one that stole the cattle. We know he was the one that shot the priest at the mission house. We know these were the Indians that killed the guys in the wagon train, right? We know because the gravity of the crime is so great. We know. We don't need to prove. We know. And although it may not necessarily be based on emotion, does the assembly of Yasharel here seem incited over the facts of this case? Oh, no question. Did they meet the standard of Deuteronomy 17:6? Did they get a second witness as to any of this stuff? No. The witness they has was the Levite, and the fact that he was willing to cut up a woman into 12 pieces to make his point. Okay. Additionally, we know if a person testifies about himself, that testimony is to be considered as false. Well, how do we know that? Well, let's take a look at this passage in John, the Gospel of John, right? This is John 8, 12 through 18. Then spoke Yahusha again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. Okay, what a beautiful statement, right? I am the light of the world. This is light. Right? And what's the reaction? The Parashim therefore said unto him, you bear record of yourself, and your record is not true. Why? Because it was the long-standing Talmudic edict that a person testifying about themselves testifies falsely. Even if he's telling the truth, it is to be construed as perjury. Well, what did you do? Well, I did this. I did. Okay. It's irrelevant what you say you did, because your testimony has to be excluded because you're testifying about yourself. Therefore, it is given as a matter of law that it's false. Okay. And Yahusha answered and said unto them, though I bear record of myself, and the law says that that's false, yet my record is true. For I know whence I came and whither I go, but you cannot tell whence I come and whither I go. Ye judge after the flesh. I judge no man. And yet if I do judge, my judgment is true. For I am not alone, but I am the Father that sent me. It is also written in the statutes describing that the testimony of two men is true. I am one that bears witness of myself, and the Father that sent me bears witness of me as well. Okay? So we see, again, the admissibility of this evidence. So now you've got Yasharel ready to go kill the entire city of Giva based upon a guy who's testifying about himself with no second witness. Okay. And the tribes of Yasharel sent men. Now this, again, our story continues. The tribes of Yasharel sent men through all the tribe of Binyamin, saying, what wickedness is this that is done among you? Now, therefore, deliver us the men, the children of Belial, which are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and put away the evil of Yasharel. Okay, so now we finally have somebody focusing in with a little bit of reason and saying, we're not going to kill all of Gibeah. Let's just go up to Gibeah, surround them with troops, and tell them, cough up these guys, these sons of Belial. Now, you can see the guys in Gibeah may have been saying, which we don't get the report here, but they may have been saying, look, these guys are in our custody. We're going to take care of it. We will handle this matter. But first, we have to determine if these guys killed the girl or if the Levite killed the girl. And we haven't adjudicated that fact yet. We're still talking to the old man, and we're still talking to some of the sons of Belial, the Beni Belial. So what happens? The children of Binyamin would not hearken to the voice of their brethren, the children of Yasharel. No, we're not doing that. We're not giving up these guys until we adjudicate the case based upon the testimony of two witnesses. It doesn't say that in the script, but this could have been their reasoning, right? But the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together out of the cities unto Geba to go out to battle. Hey, you guys want to threaten us? We're ready to do it. Slap leather, right? And the children of Benjamin were numbered at that time out of the cities 26,000 men that drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Geba, which were numbered 700 chosen men. So you got 26,700 men, right? Among all of these. And they're facing off against 40,000 guys. Among all these people, there were 700 chosen men left-handed. Now, this is interesting, right? They were left-handed. Everyone could sling stones at a hairbreadth and not miss. Such an interesting phrase right here. If you guys don't mind the dog leg out into a rabbit hole for just a minute, what you see here is you see left-handed people. So was David left-handed? I mean, this is a question. Was David left-handed? These guys were left-handed, and they could sling stones at a hairbreadth and not miss. The breadth of a hair. So when you see this kind of accuracy with slings, you're seeing these guys had practiced and practiced and practiced, and the sling was an extremely viable and important and accurate weapon among those who knew how to use it. So when David walked out there, he walks onto the field where Goliath is, and here comes a guy that's got a forehead that's like this big, right? Here's his forehead. And he's thinking, well, let's see. I could divide that forehead into 16 targets and hit all 16 of them separately, right? It's like some of the people in Wales with a dartboard, right? They're so accurate, they can hit anything they want to hit. Same thing here. David could have hit that. He could have sectioned off Goliath's forehead and said, I'm going to hit him here. I'm going to hit him here. I'm going to hit him here. But he takes enough stones to kill Goliath and his brothers, knowing full well that his slingshot capability was so accurate, this guy was going down. There was no question in his mind. There was just no question in his mind. And we see here in the past that inside these people, there were 700 men in Binyamin who were unbelievable with a sling. They could sling stones within a hairbreadth of accuracy, right? And the men of Yasharel, besides Binyamin, were numbered 400,000 men that drew the sword, and all of these were men of war. So here you got Benjamin who's coming out and saying, our 26,000 guys ain't going to take it from you. We're not going to let you grab these guys. Forget it. No, we're willing to fight. And the children of Yasharel arose and went up to the house of Elohim and asked counsel of Elohim and said, which of us shall go up first to battle against the children of Binyamin? And Yahweh said, Yehuda shall go up first. Now, this is interesting because we know that when the house of Israel breaks apart under Solomon's son, Rehoboam, when the house of Israel breaks apart, what happens? Well, all the 10 tribes go north. Who remains there in Jerusalem? Benjamin and Yehuda, right? But here, Yehuda is commissioned. Yehuda, you go get him. You go get him. And the children of Yasharel rose up in the morning and encamped against Geba. And the men of Yasharel went out to battle against Benjamin. And the men of Yasharel put themselves in array to fight against them at Geba. And the children of Benjamin came forth out of Geba and destroyed down to the ground Yasharel that day 22,000 men. Oh, you're coming against us with your big troops? Okay, fine. Boom. They killed 22,000 of them. And the people of the men of Yasharel encouraged themselves and set their battle array, again in array, in the place where they put themselves in array on the first day. And the children of Yasharel went up and wept before Yahweh until even, and asked counsel of Yahweh, saying, shall I go up again to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother? Now, you remember the first time they asked Elohim. Now, in this passage, they're asking Yahweh. And Yahweh says, go up against him. And the children of Yasharel came near against the children of Benjamin the second day, and Benjamin went forth against them out of Geba the second day, and destroyed down to the ground the children of Yasharel, again 18,000 men. All these drew the sword. So, whoa. We're up to 40,000 men now have been destroyed by these Benjamites, right? Then all the children of Yasharel and all the people went up and came unto the house of Elohim and wept and sat there before Yahweh and fasted that day until even and offered ascending smoke offerings and peace offerings before Yahweh. And the children of Yasharel inquired of Yahweh, for the ark of the covenant of Elohim was there in those days. Interesting that it would be there, right? And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aharon. Okay, so we're talking such a close proximity to the entrance into Israel. Stood before it in those days, saying, shall I yet again go out to battle against the children of Binyamin, my brother, or shall I cease? And Yahweh said, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hand. Now, when you look at this, why would Yah do such a thing, right? Why would Yah do such a thing? Well, number one, he's going to deliver Binyamin, who's got 26,000 troops roughly. And because Binyamin has already slaughtered 40,000 of the house of Yehudah. You see, Binyamin slaughtered 40,000 of the house of Yehudah. So Yah says, yeah, go up and I will deliver them into your hand. Okay. And Yasharel set liers in wait round about Giva. And the children of Yasharel went up against the children of Binyamin on the third day and put themselves in array against Giva as at other times. And the children of Binyamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city, and they began to smite the people and kill us at other times. Now, it's kind of interesting. Let's take a side road for just a second, and let's talk about this, because when we look at this idea of Yasharel goes up once, right? Judah goes up once, gets slaughtered. Judah goes up a second time, gets slaughtered. And now Judah is going up a third time. Right? So what you see is, you can liken this, if you will, to World War I, World War II, and now we're coming into World War III. So what's the expectation? The victor in World War I says, okay, we kicked them, we kicked their butt. Then World War II comes up. Yeah, we did that again, right? We put all their troops on the ground. We destroyed them down. We destroyed them down. That's the language. We destroyed them down. Third World War comes along, and Binyamin is saying, well, here they are again. They're at the gates. They're at Giva. They're right in the same place they were the last time. Here they are. Let's go out and do it again, third time. And these guys are going to get, stomped one more time. Well, let's see what happens, right? So the children of Binyamin went out against the people. Hold on, let me share that again so we can all see it. Okay. Okay, so the children of Binyamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city, and they began to smite the people and kill, as at other times, just like they did in World War I and World War II, in the highways, of which one goes up to the house of Elohim, and the other to Giva in the field, about 30 men of Yasharel. And the children of Binyamin said, they are smitten down before us, just like the first time and the second time. But the children of Yasharel said, let us flee and draw them farther away from the city unto the highway. Oh, a little battle strategy. And all of the men of Yasharel rose up out of their place and put themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the liers in wait of Yasharel came forth out of their places, even out of the meadows of Giva. In other words, we had some trenches built. We had some fortification built. This is part of the reason why we're winning, is because we've been standing off in our fortresses. And there came against Giva 10,000 chosen men out of all Yasharel, and the battle was sore. But they knew not that evil was near them. And Yahweh smote Binyamin before Yasharel, and the children of Yasharel destroyed of the Ben Hayamini that day 25,100 men. All these drew the sword. Now, if you recall, they had 26,700, and here 25,100 have been destroyed in that battle. So the children of Binyamin saw that they were smitten, for the men of Yasharel gave place to the Ben Hayamini, because they trusted unto the liers in wait, which had set beside Giva. And the liers in wait hasted and rushed upon Giva, and the liers in wait drew themselves along and smote all the city with the edge of the sword. Now there was an appointed sign between the men of Yasharel and the liars in wait that they should make a great flame with smoke rise up out of the city. And when the men of Yasharel retired in the battle, Binyamin began to smite and kill of the men of Yasharel about 30 persons, for they said, surely they are smitten down before us as in the first battle. But when the flame began to arise out of the city with a pillar of smoke, the Ben Hayamini looked behind them and went, behold, the flame of the city ascended up into heaven. And when the men of Yasharel turned again, the men of Binyamin were amazed, for they saw that evil had come upon them. Therefore, they turned their backs before the men of Yasharel unto the way of the wilderness. But the battle overtook them, and them which came out of the cities they destroyed in the midst of them. Thus they enclosed the Ben Hayamini round about and chased them and trode them down with ease over against Givah towards the sun rising. And there fell of Binyamin 18,000 men. All of these were men of valor. So we're seeing here that Binyamin is being wiped out. And they turned and fled toward the wilderness unto the rock of Rimmon. And they gleaned of them in the highways 5,000 men and pursued hard after them into Gidom and slew 2,000 men of them. So that all which fell that day at Binyamin were 20 and 5,000 men that drew the sword. All of these were men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled to the wilderness unto the rock Rimmon. Oh, okay, 600 men. They bugged out. I'm not fighting this thing. Let's get out of here. They bugged out and they abode in the rock of Rimmon for how long? 4 months they were there. And the men of Yasharel turned again upon the children of Binyamin and smote them with the edge of the sword, as well as the men of every city, as the beast, and all that came to hand. Also they set fire on all the cities they came to. They killed everybody, and they burned their cities. But 600 men. All right. Now, let's look at this conclusion of the matter and see what we come up with here. Is it reasonable to believe that the sons of Belial were the initiators of this crime? Well, yeah, I think so. When you look at the initiation of the crime begins with what? Knock, knock, knock. Send the man out that we might know him. So you have this idea of this inherent evil belonging to these sons of Belial, who may or may not have been men of Givah. They may have been sojourners through Givah, and they may have been actually someone else. They could have been the tribe of Dan, or they could have been people impersonating as the tribe of Dan, right? Something else to consider. But they were there to say, as the Sodomim had said before, send out the men that we might know them. Did the Levi have motive to contribute to the ultimate heinousness of this crime? Well, now here's the question, right? Motive and opportunity. That's always an issue. Motive and opportunity when you're talking about a crime. So we don't have hard evidence. We certainly don't have any evidence from the old man that the concubine was dead at the porch. We have evidence that she said nothing. We have evidence that the Levi cut her up. There's no question about this. But was there impetus, was there a motive on the part of the Levi to do such a thing? Well, look, he's the one that called her a whore for going back to her father's house for 4 months when he had taken her as a concubine and not a wife. So she had no legal rights, no legal status, and she takes off and goes home. So she played the whore. So, and then the Levi goes and gets her and takes her back and then offers her up to protect him. He hides behind her skirts to protect him from the sons of Belial, claiming that he thought they were going to kill him when that's not what they said. Now, she gets raped all night. Oh, well, what good is she to me now? So boom, next thing you know, she's cut up. Did he have motive? He did have motive. And of course, we know that the crime that was committed by the Levi, we know this crime, right? This gang rape that was committed. And and again, rape, we got to remember, is a crime of force. It's a crime of force. It's really about force much more than it is about sex. But you're talking about, the highest level of sexual assault that you can ever reach, enough that possibly it could have killed her, even though we know that she walked home and got there before daylight, couldn't get in because they still had the door locked, but she went home. Okay, so she wasn't dead on the scene. She didn't die until after she got home, sometime after she got home. Okay, so the question then is this: these sons of Belial, who were what? Following other Elohim corruptly. They were of an ascending corruption consistent with the Sodomim. All right. So did they have motive to kill her? Well, they didn't have, they were just a bunch of corrupt criminals, period. The question is, did they kill her? Were they the proximate cause? Now, there is another edict in law that's something very interesting. It's called Supervening Illegality. Okay. So let's say you're a mafia guy and you want to kill somebody who isn't paying their bills. So you take them up to a tall building. You should have paid your bill. You push them off. Okay. They're living when you push them off. You push them off the building. Some guy on the 13th floor says, I recognize that guy. And he shoots him on the way down. And the gunshot kills him before he hits the ground. No charge for the guy on the roof because we have supervening illegality. He was murdered by the guy on the 13th floor, not the guy on the top. He just coincidentally happened to be flying down the side of the building, right? So we see here that we could have supervening illegality, that she was alive but killed later. So did the house of Yasharel correctly adjudicate this crime? Now, I think the answer is here, no chance they correctly adjudicated it, although I do think they were seeking a rightful remedy. There was one thing that they could ascertain, at least to some degree, although I think they needed a second witness, which is that the woman was raped repeatedly, right? And so this testimony we get in the text of the script, but the only one testifying about that to Yasharel is this one guy, this Levi, who had motive to murder her, right? So anyway, but nonetheless, let's just assume that the text, in fact, was giving us a correct elicitation of the events and the facts. And if we do assume that, then what? These were the facts. And so they came and said, all right, these are the facts. We think that these sons of Belial are, in fact, the guilty party. So give them up. All right. So this would have, now maybe the house of Yasharel was intending on trying these guys. Maybe not. Maybe they were just going to slaughter them right there. But they did at some level ascertain the guilty party. And Binyamin, who was filled with his own pride, said, nope, you're not coming into our jurisdiction to tell us what to do. In our jurisdiction, we adjudicate the crimes, not you. You're out of your jurisdiction. Go back home to Israel and adjudicate your own crimes and leave us to adjudicate the crimes here ourselves. We don't see that in the discussion, but it's possible that it was one argument. You're not going to do it. We're going to do it, right? And did they have a chance to hear this? Well, they got a body part, and were they gathered in the 12 tribe assembly? It says the litany says that all of the assembly had gathered together. All of the assembly had gathered together. So Benjamin must have been sitting there recognizing, hey, these guys are all going to come out to Gibeah now. So we better go defend the place, right? Now, somebody has said in the chat that likely that the woman died from internal injuries, probably bleeding to death from internal injuries. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly reason to believe the fact pattern could lead us to conclude that that was, in fact, the cause of death. But again, we don't have that stated in the text. All right. So do we know exactly who survived this onslaught among Benjamin? Now, I didn't get into chapter 21 of Judges, which is its own heinous event. Because, at this point, you have 600 men that survived the slaughter of Binyamin. And the rest of the house of Israel says, okay, well, what are we going to do with these 600 men who have no women? Why don't they have any women? Because we killed them all. So what do we do to make the tribe of Benjamin keep going? Well, there was one house, this one city, up north in Gilead, that refused to come down and bring their troops down here to slaughter these guys at Gibeah. Oh, those guys. Yeah, they didn't come down, did they? No, they didn't. Okay, well, let's go up there and kill all the men and women and the kids and will only preserve the virgin girls. I mean, this is what they said, and this is what they did. Okay, yeah, great idea. So they go up to this village and they slaughter the whole village, except they keep 400 virgin girls and they give them to these 600 men who were hanging out in the rocks of Rimmon. Here you go. Here's your wives. Well, you're 200 girls short. Oh, okay. Well, you can catch whoever dances up at Shiloh when they come out for the feast and they're dancing. Go after those girls, right? So you see, I mean, when you think about that, and is there any charge of a crime on that we went up and slaughtered men and women? Why? To provide virgins for these 600 guys that ran away from the battle? And how do we know these 600 guys that ran away from the battle weren't the very sons of Belial to begin with? How do we know that? Right? Do we ever get an adjudication of the hard fact? No. Instead, what we get is a mob incited by incendiary evidence that did not comport with the standards of the Torah in their adjudication of the events before they acted, and instead went to war, and in that war sustained massive losses in the house of Judah, 40,000 men dead, and completely wiped out the house of Benjamin, especially if these 600 guys were imposters pretending they were the sons of Binyamin, but in fact were sons of Belial, worshiping a false god and taking on someone else's name to get away with the crime they committed. Okay? So with that being said, this is what we're going to look at. The next time we look at this topic, we're going to be taking a look at this idea of identity theft. And this idea of identity theft in this particular set of chapters in the book of Judges. We'll go back and see, because remember that you have, in one of the events that takes place, not only do we have this crime where they go up and slaughter this whole village, all the men and women there, in order to steal their daughters to be given to this army. But before that, you have the house of Dan saying, you've got these guys wandering around, supposedly from Dan, saying, we're sick and tired of this little bit of land that we were given over here on the coast, right? Which is now today modern Tel Aviv, right? Where, a couple of million people live, but too small for the house of Dan. We need something better than that. We need something different. And so the house of Dan divided. One house stayed there on the coast and became seafarers, but another part of the house of Dan went up and found a village that was unarmed and that was unprotected because it was too far away from its capital. And they went in there and slaughtered every man, woman, and child, and then called the city of Dan. Now, when you read in scriptures, you have a couple of scriptures that are saying that, the prophecy about Dan in Genesis 49, there's another prophecy that Moses talks about it. And the prophecy says that Dan shall leap over Bashan. Dan shall leap over Bashan. Now, I want to show you something if we can here. I think we have a second to do this. Let me see if I can get us onto that screen here. Just a moment. Yeah. We're going to go in here for just a second. And we're going to take a look at, of course, some Google Earth while we've got a few minutes. Let's go into Google Earth and let's take a look. Let me share this now. So here we can see on Google Earth, okay? Now, on Google Earth here, let's close in just a little bit more. Here you're going to be able to see there are actually 4 major rivers that come out of this region. You can't see this one very clearly because I think most of the people have drank most of the water. But you have here, these 4 major rivers are what? Well, let me see if I get a text box going here, just a second. So over here, we have what? We have the Danube. Let me switch that color. Just a minute. Switch that color over to, we have the Danube. Oh, maybe I should have left it yellow. And then here, we have the Cepher And then here we have the Dnester. And then over here, we have the Don. Okay. Now these four rivers here, the Danube, the Dnieper, the Dnester, and the Don, okay. I think the Don is up here, actually. I think it's here. But when you look at those rivers, you're going to see what? You see a common integer, and the common integer is Don, 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 Dnester, Dnieper, Danube. And these rivers are here because this is where the house of Dan that leapt over Bashan. Okay, now somebody's asking the question here, and I'm going to get to that right here. This is where they ended up. They ended up in this region. Now, somebody asked the question, Mark Leonard, is there any evidence that the 600 men were the sons of Belial and not Binyamin? Well, I'll tell you, Mark, I don't have any evidence right now in this particular presentation, but when we go back and look at chapter 17 and 18, we're going to see something very interesting. You're right; it is an assumption that these were the sons of Belial. We don't know that, right? We don't know that. In fact, the scripture says there were 600 men left of the army of Binyamin that went into the caves of Rimmon, right? I'm glad you guys got your thinking caps on. But when we look a little closer at what takes place in 17 and 18, we may see some inferential evidence showing this, but we do know that we have the sons of Belial, who were doing serious things and may have gotten away with the crime. But it's very clear from the evidence that the sons of Belial were not brought to justice. Now, you might say, well, we brought them to justice because we killed 100% of the house of Benjamin. And so therefore, if they were in the city of Giva, we got them because we killed everybody in Giva. And if they were of the house of Benjamin, we got them because we killed everybody of Benjamin, except 600. So were the sons of Belial brought to justice? And I think the evidence is we don't have any evidence that they were, in fact. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to some questions now, and let's see what we have here, right? Now, someone is asking, Serenity Gardens is asking, Uxbridge, what is the definition of nation, right? Now, here's, we talk about nation, in the text, you're going to see, for instance, where the English term is used, that Abraham is going to be the father of many nations, for instance, right? And what the text, the Hebrew there is melo goyim, which is inferred in English as nations, goyim, right? Many peoples. In the Greek, this word is ethnos. And ethnos, again, is also, ethnos, again, is going to be, nations, like where we get ethnicity, people of a specific ethnicity, that would be the ethnos. And that would kind of fill out what is called nations. Now someone asks, yes, Lily asks, is this the Black Sea? Yes, that is the Black Sea. And in fact, let's see. Let me see if I can go back to that, and I'll share that screen again, and we'll see. Yeah, that this is in fact the Black Sea. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Oh, no wonder I couldn't find them, because the Black Sea is over here. Okay, here we go. Let's go back again, and let's do these rivers one more time. I'm sorry. So here is the Dnieper. Here is the Danube. Here is the Dnester, and here is the Don. Let me annotate this. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really sorry about that. I really made a mistake here. Here is the Don. Here is the Dnester. Here is the Dnieper, and here is the Danube, and this is the Black Sea. These are the four rivers that come into the Black Sea. Okay, right there. This is the Black Sea here, and so this is right here. This is Crimea. Okay, that's Crimea. This here is called the Sea of Azov. Let's see if I can get up here in a second. And you will see that if we had this highlighted, you would see Kiev up here. And this region up here is the Donbass. This is where all the fighting is going on, is over here, in this region, the Donbass. Okay. Kiev is up here. And you can't see it here because I've deleted kind of the politics of it all. But if we go in here, we can simply go over here. And we should be able to, but maybe not. Yeah, there we go. And we can put in places and borders, okay? And now you can see, here's Ukraine, right? Kharkiv is one of the places that's been really badly bombed. If we bomb in here closer, you'll see that you can see here now that here is Donetsk, right here. Hope you guys don't mind me doing this. Here is Donetsk, here. And this is Luhansk, here. So this region here, this is called the Donbass. This is called Donbass. There's been heavy fighting here in Mariupol, right here. And there has also been heavy fighting in here. And there is a province that is now under intense attack, which I'm not sure I can find it. Of course, you know, one of the things they're worried about is Chernobyl. That's a big issue. Let me see if I can find the province here. I'm not going to be able to find it. Anyway, you can see that this is the nation. It's a pretty good sized nation, Ukraine, right? And the Kiev is here, and the alternative city is here near the Polish border, Lviv, Belarus, Poland. This particular area here, this is called Kaliningrad here, and this is a Russian this is Russian space, Kaliningrad, and these are the three Baltic states: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Russia here, Finland here. Okay, all right. So sorry about that egregious area. I should have gotten it cleared up right off the bat, and I got in too close. Okay, but thank you for asking me. Okay, prisoner of war, POW, yeah. Did the Levite think this was fair compensation for his concubine? Carolyn asks. Boy, wow. There's a question, Carolyn. There is a question. Did the Levite think this was fair compensation? You know, the slaughter of 80,000 men for his concubine? That would be extreme arrogance, would it not? Extreme arrogance. And see, this is part of the reason why when you have these kind of facts, they have to be carefully adjudicated so that you can get to the root of the issue and say who is guilty and who isn't guilty. And maybe the best bet was to say, look, we've determined that the sons of Belial were the ones responsible, these certain men. They need to be identified by this levy. Once they're identified, then we will move against those guys, right? Yeah, I mean, so that would be, but when you don't do that, when you allow emotion to prevail, and when emotion comes over the top of everybody, then it's like somebody's going to die for this crime. And what happens? It was a mob rule, and Binyamin was resistant to the mob. They were resistant to the mob. And so as a consequence, boom, all these people died. And what does a Levite have to say about all this? We don't hear, because the book of Judges ends, right? I guess the Levite went on his way and said, well, that's what you get. You know, so I don't know. Anyway, yeah, thank you, Shelley, for your compliment. I appreciate it. Code Searcher. Okay, yeah. Hey, Code Searcher, glad you guys are here. Yeah, and Yachonenbel, is that lot the land of the Ashkenazi? Yeah, in fact, that land that we just talked about is the ancient Kazarian Empire, right? And again, yeah, that what we just looked at in Ukraine and over the north of the Caspian is the ancient land of Khazaria. And before that, in fact, we talked about this last week to some degree, and I'll show you again what we were talking about. Is that when you look at the map here, we'll see again that we have in this area here. So Khazaria actually occupied. Let me see here. So Khazaria actually occupied this area here. So it was kind of all of this area here was Khazaria. This area here, when you talk about Yafet, yeah, I mean, here's what you were looking at, right? So the tribe of Gomer, or Gemer, as we say, Gemer. Let's do try yellow, see if that helps us. The tribe of Gemer, right? They were here. And then when you look at the Ashkenazi, who were the children of Gemer, this region here was called Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz. So this region was called Ashkenaz, and Ashkenaz would be is going to be considered actually kind of this. And that's not even it. Let me clear that just a minute. We're talking something like this. Ashkenaz is like this kind of region. Okay. And so this would be kind of Ashkenaz. This was Gemer. And then you see, of course, when we move downstream from that, we see that down here is where we see, Meshech, Tubal, and Togarmah. So Togarmah is going to be in, let me see if I can get it just a second. Hold on. I got it. Togarmah is like here. This is Togarmah. And Balkar or Bulgar here up in these mountains. So Meshech, Tubal, Togarmah, right, in this whole area. So yeah, this was originally the land of Yafet, right? Okay, so so Donbass is populated with Russian ethnics after Stalin eliminated vast numbers of Ukrainian in Holodomor. Yeah, and when you talk about this, this was a horrendous thing that happened in the Holodomor, Mikhaila Gavril, that you're bringing this up, yeah, because in 32 and 33, Stalin starved 10 million Ukrainians, and he starved them, he deprived them of all their wheat, and began to move Ukrainian farmers out of Ukraine to the Urals, and then brought in Russians to take the land of the Ukrainians that had lost their farms. And that's pretty much what happened. And you see everything that Stalin did now is subject to civil war throughout Russia. I mean, that's been going on for quite a bit of time now. So, okay, so let's see. The acceptable area. Okay, if your graphics, okay, it really helps make sense. I'm glad you got, Debbie, I'm glad it's helping. Really got okay. Okay, so Debbie says, I think the guilty one is the Levy. No wonder she left him in the first place. Well, he seemed to have an attitude issue, didn't he? And so Angela asks, if Dan isn't mentioned in Revelation, what does that mean for his descendants? Well, this is an interesting thing, because actually when you look at the temple envisioned by Ezekiel, it's got 12 tribes, right? And it's got 12 gates and 12 foundations. And in fact, the 12 foundations, I think it is mentioned in New Jerusalem in Revelation 21 when it talks about it. It's just not in the 144,000. Dan has no part of that 12 tribes, right? Okay. The old man was a witness to those men, but he was never asked. Yeah, now see, Beck Ekstrom, this is a really good question. Why was the old man not questioned? I mean, here you have another witness, and by the testimony of the second witness, we could have gotten the whole story, right? We could have ascertained the facts, and maybe he could have identified some of the sons of Belial, right? And so this is such an important point. Why wasn't he inquired of, right? And so I think that would have made a difference. And I think when we look at this, in order to predicate the facts, we have to be able to have a calm head. And this goes for us. Look, there is a lesson for us here in the modern world too, right? Because when somebody comes out and says, "Oh, look, Billy Graham was a member of a Masonic lodge," right? And people are willing to burn him at the stake. We don't hear anything from Billy Graham. He can't answer because he's dead, right? And there have been other people who have said, like, I'll give you an example. Well, Vladimir Putin was at the World Economic Forum. Yeah, but guess what? Putin probably showed up there as a spy to find out what they were up to. I mean, the thing is, we don't know the answers to these questions. And for us to get inflamed because of the appearance of one symbol or one image and say, that's it, we don't need to know anything more. We don't need the testimony of two witnesses to establish the truth of the matter. We've already made up our mind. Well, I'll tell you, that's a dangerous place to be, because when you make decisions like that, Next thing you know, there's 80,000 dead, right? And it shouldn't be that way. Yeah, so here, the Genesis 49 passage, Annie puts in, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path that shall bite the horse's heel so that his rider shall fall backward. Yeah, Annie, that's such a great passage. And when we talk about Dan in the presence of the book of the Judges, when we go back next time we look at this issue, which we're going to look at this issue again. We're going to look at these prophecies concerning Dan and what happened that Dan would move against this village and slaughter the whole village to create the city of Dan. Right? Just as we saw Yehuda move against this village and slaughter the whole village in order to get 400 virgins for what was left of Binyamin, right? I'll tell you, it's big, right? All right, so let's see. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, watching with Mr. Jones about the Holodomor. Yeah, okay, so Mr. Jones, right? That's a movie about the Holodomor. Okay, great, yeah. Okay, so this wasn't long. So Lopau asked, can you provide a timeline as to when this occurred after Yahusha ben Nun's inheritance divisions? Well, it was pretty soon after that. It was within 2 generations, right? It was within 2 generations because Pinehas was still the Kohen Gadol. Pinehas was the Kohen Gadol. So this was pretty, although it appears at the end of Judges. So, when you read the book of Judges, the first judge was Yahusha ben Nun, right? He was the first judge. And the last judge was Shemuel, right? He was the last judge of Israel. And so between Yahusha, which in his book, Yahusha, and Shemuel in his book, 1 Samuel, you have this litany of history that goes on in the book of Judges. The story of Gideon, the story of Deborah, the story of Shimshon or Samson, the story of Samson. You have this list of judges that rise up over Israel in a time when Yahweh was the king and the lawmaker and the judge. Yahweh was the king, lawmaker, and judge. And the people would rise, they would rise up a champion that was called the judge. The judge would rise up, or the shofet, the judge would rise up and he would judge Israel and he would make the decisions about what was going to happen. And they were able to do pretty well against the kings, the pagan and the pagan kings that were around them. They did pretty well under this format. But under Shemuel, they rejected these kings and they became under a king. They rejected Yah's leadership and demanded a king, and they got Shaul. Now, Shaul was a king. I'm going to say Shaul came to power at about 1040 BC, right in that range, very close to that, about 1040 BC. He became the king. So when you talk about the Exodus beginning in about 1492 BC, so that would be 472 years earlier, 40 years in the desert. So that's, 432. And when they cross, so you're talking about several centuries under the judges. Okay. Several centuries under the judges. Okay. So I think it's something like that. Okay. They're very extreme warlike people. Yeah. 1406 BC. Okay, that's a pretty good guess right there. Designer says 1406 BC. Okay, what does Ukraine have to do with Kazarian, with the Kazarian mafia? Well, the Kazarian mafia, we know that the Kazarian mafia appears to be not related to the tribe of Judah, but rather they're name stealers. In other words, they, you can kind of look. I'm going to do a show on this eventually, but it probably will not be on Cepher Academy. But I'm going to be talking about people that you believe are one person, and they aren't. Okay, like let me give you some names, and you guys could just kind of think about them. Victor Mordecai, Joseph Yugashvili, Vladimir Ulyanov, George Scherf, Leslie Lynch King, Bari Malik Shabazz, right? All of these, A. Schickelgruber, all of these people are people that you know very, very well. But they took on different names. They took on different identities, and they took on different identities to deceive. Now, someone asked the question, does Nazi come from the word Ashkenazi? Well, I mean, look, there's some real questions on this here, Beck. I mean, you're asking a very good question. You know, the head of the Sanhedrin in modern English, they call him the Nasi. But we know that in the Ivrit, we have two letters, right? We have tzadi, which is like TS, like and in the word eretz, tzadi, and we have Zion, which is a Z, right? And so you say, well, is Nasi, but the ancient pronunciation for the head of the Sanhedrin was Nazi. Now, when you look at the Nazi Party in Germany was known as the National Socialist Party. The Nazi was a tag that they put on it after the fact, but they were known initially as National Socialists, right? And we know that the leadership, I mean, no one wants to talk about the leadership in Ukraine, but there are pictures of Zelensky running around with a swastika on a T-shirt that has his name over the swastika. The swastika is being flown by the Azov battalion and other battalions inside of Ukraine. And so they're well known as, you know, self-proclaimed wearers of the swastika. So you got to take it for what you find it, right? Take it as you find it, right? Okay, so did Ashkenaz put a hurting on Peter the Great and cut off the Russian society as they were peacefully living? Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, Peter the Great was not one of the czars that suffered egregiously. When the czars began to suffer egregiously was with a Jesuit manipulation that began in the 19th century. And the Jesuit manipulation, which was responsible for the death of Alexander III, you know, there's a church built for him called Church on Spilled Blood in St. Petersburg. And then, of course, the overthrow and the ultimate assassination of Nicholas II and the slaughter of his entire family, whose, once again, their bodies were cut up and pushed down a well, right? And that was done by Joseph Yugashvili and Vladimir Ulyanov, known respectively as Stalin and Lenin. Okay. So Sherry says, even if they say that the tongue is wicked, even if the Levite did not kill his concubine, by his false testimony, he swayed the mob reaction towards the deaths of so very many people. And I mean, I think that's true. I mean, we have a subtle misrepresentation, but a misrepresentation of facts. Right? Okay. So I think we're closing in on the end of these questions. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to kind of wrap it up here this evening. I want to thank you for being with us on this presentation of the Sons of Belial. And we are going to explore this topic in the book at the end of Judges a little bit more the next time I'm here. I won't be here next week because I'll be traveling. But then we're going to be discovering it the week after, and we're going to be talking in particular about how all these things fall out. And we're going to look much closer at Dan and what Dan has done and what Dan did, right? Okay. All right. So thank you so much, guys. I want to thank you guys for being with me today on another production of Cepher Academy, the Sons of Belial. Don't forget to visit us at cepher.net. And, and keep this in mind, guys. Okay, I'm just going to give you this before we go away. Right now, we have things that are taking place in the world that are very, very dramatic. And we know that there have been supply chain issues. Food is disappearing from the shelves. Gas is going up in price. Natural gas is going up. The cost of heating your house is going up. And I can tell you that most of the analysts that look at this are saying, this is just the mere beginning. There's also a lot of discussion about coming cyber attacks and possibly EMPs. So with all of that being said, we had decided at Cepher Publishing Group a long time ago that instead of putting our scripture online, where you could just download it on your phone, although we do have it available on the phone, or put it on your desktop, which you can get free of charge through eSword, at least in the 66 book version, we decided to print the book. And we decided to print the book in a quality that would allow a Bible student, a student of Scripture, to routinely open this book on a daily basis to be able to read and study the Scriptures without the book falling apart in their hands, without the cover being, falling apart, without the book falling apart. So as a result, we make it's a Smythe-sewn, hardbound book. And just to correct the record, The leather that is on the cover of the Cepher is absolutely 100% cowhide. There's no pork in it whatsoever. There's no pork in it. We confirmed that back in 2012 and reconfirmed it several times. There's no pork in that leather. It's leather, it's cow leather. Okay. Now, also, because the book is Smythe sewn and hardbound, you can expect a lifetime of using the book. We've developed it as a family heirloom. For instance, if you look in the back of the book, you'll see that there is a place to set forth your genealogical history, your mother's relatives, your kids. You can go back many, many generations, in fact, to detail your entire family history in writing in your own book that you can maintain and pass it down from generation to generation. However, I've got to tell you this straight out. Our printer, because of the cost of manufacturing, has hit us with a 30% price increase in the cost of producing our book. Now, I talked with David about this, and David and I, Dave Castro, who's our general manager and COO, he and I, have had long discussions about this, and it's our heart to try to maintain our spot and our price point for as long as we can. Now, we think that we can continue to maintain the price point where it is, notwithstanding the 30% price increase that's come at us from the printers, okay? So we're going to hold that as long as we possibly can. But what my recommendation to you guys is this: if you don't have a hardbound version of the text and you're relying on a digital version, or you have other friends that are relying on the digital version, just keep in mind, we may lose all of this digital stuff when this war increases in its kinetic ability, okay? As we get farther and farther into this thing is going to get more dramatic. So visit us at cepher.net. And remember that if you pick up the package deal, where you get the tabs and you get some of the other stuff that goes with it, the lexicon and so on, we're going to ship it out to you free. We use FedEx, and most people get it in 2 to 3 days, right? Now, if you're in South Africa, it's going to be longer, right? And there'll be a shipping cost if you're outside the United States. But otherwise, we'll get the book to you, okay? And if you're in the UK, stop, go and visit. You could, if you're in the UK or in Australia, or even in South Africa for that matter, or in Europe, you can go to our website, look at our distributor list, and find the distributor that is near you. Now, even though the distributor has to pay tariffs and everything else when the book comes into the country, those tariffs are a lot less when the distributor orders in bulk, and then he can get the book out to you by dividing up the shipping costs between it. In Britain, we are printing the large print edition of the Millennium edition, large print edition, and Stuart Oram, he has those books available if you would like to order. And so you order through Stuart, he's on our website under distributors, and we'll get you a book as printed in Britain. So guess what? You don't have to pay the freight and you don't have to pay the tariff, and you get the large print edition of the Cepher Millennium, not the collector's edition, but it's a big look. It's a big book. Well, let's face it, it's big, but it's well printed, well done there in Britain, and you can get it through Stuart. Okay. These t-shirts or sweatshirts right here, which you can also get in a t-shirt and a non-hoodie sweatshirt. These are done by my friends Jeremiah and Chelsea, and that is through yahusha.apparel907@gmail.com. All right. And then finally, don't forget to join us on Cepher Academy if you're interested in becoming a greater student. Check us out on Cepher Academy. I really appreciate it. For those of you that are not subscribers, subscribe. Hit the notification bell. You'll find out when we're going to do the next show, although generally I don't have it up until Wednesday night for the Thursday show. But if you subscribe, and you hit the bell, you'll get notification. And if you're a subscriber, you can participate in the chat, and you can see the wonderful people that are here in the chat. Absolutely fantastic group of people. I love you guys. Thanks for being around and staying with us for this presentation. So with that, I'm going to say shalom. I'll see some of you at the Saturday Sabbath meeting. And until then, may you be blessed. Baruch atah Yahweh. May his blessing be upon you and his name be on you, that he might bless you and your children for now and forever.